Hi. Today I'd like to talk to you about rewind therapy, which is one of my favorite approaches, especially in the treatment of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and especially intrusive thoughts associated with it. It's been developed by a doctor called David Moss, and it's become a indispensable technique in the treatment of PTSD. And the important thing about it is that it actually works internationally, cross-culturally, because what it really focuses on is not necessarily the trauma, if you like, itself, but it's really focusing on the intrusive thoughts mostly. So it's trying essentially to reorganize the brain to put those memories of a traumatic event into the place they belong. But more about that a little bit later. Another thing I like about rewind therapy is, and I have used it successfully, especially with victims of historic sexual abuse and the traumatic events that relate to that, and in some cases rape survivors as well, is that it's often called closure without disclosure. That's one of the mottos linked to this rewind therapy. And the reason for that is that you don't have to tell me, as a therapist, all the details of all the absolute memories that you have of that particular traumatic event. So the risk of you being re-traumatized by what's happened to you is actually minimal, because you essentially, although you kind of live it a little bit, if you like, you don't have to share anything with me. So it's actually particularly useful for example, for victims of rape, but also for servicemen who have been through extraordinary circumstances in the line of duty, and obviously now they somehow struggle to come to terms with it. And another good thing about rewind therapy is that it can be used for anybody that's been traumatized in any way. So they could be victims, they could be survivors, they could be perpetrators to a certain extent that have been traumatized by what they've done. Obviously, circumstances are very important here. It could be useful for people that have witnessed a traumatic event, or for people that just sort of thought about a traumatic event, which in a sense traumatized them. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody who went to Tunisia on holiday, and about 6 months later, after they visited that country, there was a terrorist incident on one of the beaches where some gunmen shot some unarmed tourists in a part of a sort of a jihadist attack. That isn't quite so important. My acquaintance wasn't there at all at the time. Actually, they visited 6 months previously. But they were so overwhelmed by the thought that it could have been them in that situation that they're almost traumatized by association, if you like, by just the thought that that could have happened to them while they were visiting that space. So, in a sense, this particular technique worked really well to get rid of the intrusive thoughts that were plaguing their life in this instance. So it's actually a very versatile technique. It works really well. And I'll explain a little bit, without giving any trade secrets away, but I will explain a little bit how it works. So, when we are traumatized by a specific event, one of the more disturbing or toxic features, if you like, is intrusive thoughts, where we get on with our day, and all of a sudden, apparently without any trigger or without any sort of reason whatsoever, we have this particular vision in our head, this particular thought, feeling, sensation, or even a visual stimuli related to what's happened to us, whether, again, we're a victim of something or we've witnessed something. And that can really, really cause us tremendous distress throughout the day. We are trying to get on with our lives, and this image of this particular traumatic event just wouldn't leave us alone. So you can see how that's, quite actually not just disturbing and not just scary, but also incredibly damaging. And also, it really, really impairs our ability to get on with our daily life. So one of the things that rewind therapy is so good at is because it doesn't claim to cure, if you like, the trauma. What it actually does is it deals with those intrusive thoughts. It takes away those thoughts, if you like, that the brain has somehow, because of the traumatic event, kept in the short-term memory, and it keeps repeating them without our will, if you like, and it kind of stores them away in a long-term memory where they should be, where we keep all the stuff that we know, but we don't really deal with on a regular basis. So, for example, I may not think of a holiday to Greece on a regular basis at all. But if somebody asks me about it, says, oh, by the way, have you ever visited Greece? I will then go back into my long-term memory storage and I'll go, oh yes, I did go there in 1990, whatever, and this is what I did, or as much as I can remember about that information anyway. So what this particular technique does is that instead of keeping the memories of the traumatic event in a short-term memory for us to kind of being punctured with it on a regular basis, it stores that information in the rightful place in long-term memory. Now, what that means is that the information will be there. Now, if I want to access that information about a traumatic event when I'm in talking therapy or when I'm talking to a friend, I can. I will still have those images. I will still have that sensory stimulation there, that memory of what's happened. But the crucial thing is, with this particular technique, is that it won't impede my day. It won't just all of a sudden appear to me uncalled for during the day. It will only be brought up if I actively and consciously think about it. Because intrusive thoughts are essentially an unconscious, or subconscious, I should say, byproduct of the trauma. They just appear without us thinking about it, calling for them, or even trying to think about that particular event. And funnily enough, the more we try not to think of that event, the more the intrusive thoughts will plague us. So what actually this technique does is, by storing the information in the long-term memory, is allowing us to process it properly. And it allows us to just recall it when we need to. So I think the rewind therapy is a really crucial bit. Rewind therapy is a really crucial bit in what I do, because, as I said, for a lot of people that I've worked with, and especially cases of